Hello, this is Rumor, and I am so delighted and grateful if you're joining me here today. It has been a minute since I've filmed a video for this channel, which might not have seemed to have been the case as videos continue to post weekly, give or take, over the last month, but truth be told, those were all filmed back in January and February in anticipation of the fact that I would be basically out of commission for the last month. Starting with early March when I traveled to the States to celebrate my mom's 80th birthday. That was very fun. We decided to roast her, as in not holding her over an open flame, but putting on little performances at her expense, although mine ended up kind of backfiring and turning it on me, and I kind of learned what a big a-hole I have been over the years, because I thought it would be fun to catalog like our top fights. And as I went through it, I realized, oh, a lot of these were my fault. So sorry, Mom. Anyways, at least that could all come out in the open and I could make my amends in front of the entire family. So whatever. My mom's a feisty 80 though. We knew that she could take it if there were things at her expense, and she was a trooper. It was fun. And so after 2 weeks there, I flew back here with her, and she had not been here for a decade, so it was very exciting. I had her here all to myself for a week, and then the second week of her visit, my sister and her husband actually flew into town and also stayed here. And so they were able to fly back with her. So that was nice, since she hadn't traveled in a while overseas, for her to have a traveling companion. And we visited some classic London sites like Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, etc. And a road trip out to Stonehenge, which is just about a couple of hours away from here. And yeah, then the day after seeing them off, my husband and I hopped back in the car and drove to Wales, where we decided to hang out for the long Easter weekend. And we did a lot of hiking and just enjoying actually some wonderful weather after what had been a lot of crap rain through a lot of my visitors' time here. But yeah, it was lovely over the weekend, and so I'm still just kind of like in the recovery phase of coming back after that, because everything was just like boom, boom, boom for a while, and I've been, just very like out of routine. Everything has been so fun, but there's been a lot that I've like neglected from just day-to-day life, and so it kind of feels nice right now to just be like settling back into a normal schedule and reestablishing for myself my tarot practice, which largely fell to the wayside during this time. Not completely, but I just wasn't as like actively engaging in it and as consistently as I would have liked to, as you could probably tell from me dropping a moon cycle reading for the new moon several weeks ago, only to not follow up with the subsequent ones that I said would be coming. And in my defense, I do think I said at the time that I couldn't guarantee it would be happening right away, that I'd be able to do all of those videos in order. And as it turned out, I just didn't. I was busy working against a deadline, and so I wasn't doing those readings for myself. And maybe I did one, and I just did it quickly, and it just wasn't something where I could just like film it and edit it and share it. I do promise to be back with more of those if you liked that. I mean, I'm not pretending to introduce anything revolutionary. It's probably borrowing from a lot of other ideas that I've seen out there, and my readings, my spreads that I've created are just an amalgam of that. But nonetheless, I mean, it is part of my practice for the most part. When I'm consistent enough to follow my own practice. So it's something I just wanted to share with you, because it's something that I am actually doing. But as far as the things that I have actually managed to do since the beginning of March, with all of this other activity in mind and looking at this pile next to me, I really should have made an outline for myself of what to follow here. I'm not sure where to begin, but how about... Oh, and as I'm looking at it, I'm realizing I didn't grab everything. So give me 1 second. Okay, I got it. Because thinking back to early March, I guess technically that was when my study group and I wrapped up our Ching study, for which I was using the Tao Oracle. And my study buddies had other resources, other decks that they worked with, but I just wanted to keep it simple because we did all 64 hexagrams on a daily basis, going through weekends and everything. And so it wasn't like it was that taxing of a thing to have to do on a daily basis, but because life just comes up and because schedules do get disrupted, I mean, it just wasn't always possible to keep up with it properly. So I did find it a challenge sometimes. And there were definitely days where I'd have to scramble a bit to catch up on 2 or 3 days. But keeping it basic helped with that. And now that I'm thinking of it, I forgot another thing. So hold on. Okay, I had my little journal here that I was keeping. I had just enough pages at the back for I Ching, which I simply did 2 to a page like this with the hexagrams, the titles. I did, in addition to the Tao Oracle, refer to the I Ching descriptions at the back of Bennabelle Wen's Spirit Keepers Tarot Book of Maps. I clearly forgot to grab that too, but I've shown it in previous videos. But that deck, the Spirit Keepers, I have the Revelation Edition. It incorporates the I Ching as well. It has hexagrams on each of its cards. And so at the outset, it was interesting to be using that tarot deck in conjunction with this study to just add another layer of insight. But then after a while, as I think I have shared before, I started to peter out because the Book of Maps is just very full on. Those cards contain a whole world unto themselves, and it was sort of distracting me from this actual study of just these hexagrams. I was putting a lot more time just into learning that deck. And so while I thought it would be a cool thing to do simultaneously and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I really did, if I was going to stick with this daily more or less, I needed to just like bring that focus back into the I Ching itself. And so I continued using tarot with it. I think my study group and I found that that was like the most rewarding part of it, because when it came down to it, we all love tarot. We all love tarot so much. And while we're all like eager learners and excited about other systems as well, which made it a very worthwhile study to go through each of these hexagrams, I think that ultimately consensus opinion was that none of us, at least at that time, felt that it was a system that we were resonating with ultimately. Going through, I mean, it was really fascinating to see how the hexagrams were mirroring our lives at that time, like our hexagram for the day. We could all find some way in which that energy was playing out in our lives. And that's what the tarot readings were for, to just sort of unpack that a bit more and maybe make us aware of it if we weren't conscious of it. And so, I mean, our discussions were really, really rewarding because we were just learning a lot about ourselves and our own lives and about each other, and kind of supporting each other through you know, the times where it was a dip, and then celebrating with each other when things are on the upswing, because there's definitely an undulation that moves through the I Ching. There are definitely the highs and lows. It's very well balanced, like the tarot. It kind of capturing the best and the worst that life has to offer, but always encouraging you to try to just like stay the course and just try to stay with your nose above the water and not get taken down in the undertow, but to just kind of ride it with those ups and downs, the ebbs and the flows. Whoa! So, yes, it was absolutely fascinating in that respect. Did we all kind of crap out towards the end? Yeah. I mean, we saw it through. We all stuck with it. But it was definitely feeling like more of a push towards the end. And so I think that's where we were just sort of left with, well, maybe we'll do further work with this in the future. But for right now, it just seems like, you know, we did the coin toss. I keep a set of 3 coins. The others had some as well. And so we did do the traditional casting because it's not originally a deck-based system. But that was really a really neat way to find closure on it. But again, as much as we like casting and the overall study that we had experienced, it just seemed like this system didn't click with us in the same way tarot does. So I feel like I'm glad then for dipping into it in the light way that I did, where I mainly used it as a way to finally bond with this Tao Oracle, because I had been using it as an oracle where I just shuffled it and pulled a card for the last few years, but I had never really taken a deeper look at the actual underlying system of it and acquainted myself with all 64 of these hexagrams. So I feel like now as an oracle deck, I just understand and feel connected to this one, you know, so much better than previously. So that was worth it. And it's a great way to continue to work with those energies of the I Ching. And because, you know, throwing stuff is fun, so I'm sure that like I will cast now and then as is traditional, but I just don't think it's the thing that I'm going to want to do on a regular basis. And more likely than anything, it's something I'm going to do to supplement a tarot reading, which is kind of how I do with anything else, whether it is runes or geomancy or charm casting. It's usually tarot that's at the heart of it. And I'm just looking for that little supplement. So anyway, that's just to conclude that I Ching practice and how that went for us. So then the next practice I started in March on the 21st, spring equinox, the Decan Walk, which I'm sure you've been hearing about. There's certainly a tag out there. Marlena Teresa has initiated this, at least for this year. I know others have done it before, but she's invited all of us along for the ride if we care to pursue this journey for whatever reason people might want to, because it seems like those that I'm interacting with so far on it, we all seem to be at a different stage of it. There are people who are very well versed in astrology and could interpret your charts and do this professionally. So they've been offering wonderful insight. But then there are those like me where it's like, what's a Decan Walk? What's a Decan? I mean, I literally did not know until Marlena started talking about it. So I am going into this as an absolute newbie. I have only dabbled in astrology as far as, I mean, like horoscopes, yeah, sun, moon, rising sign. It's not something I've really incorporated with tarot. I've recognized the symbolism in the traditional tarot cards, but I have never sat to properly look at what's at play there? Why is that symbol on that card? What is the elemental association? What are the planets associated with the card in addition to zodiac sign, and so on and so forth? It's just not something I ever really delved into. And meanwhile, I have had this book on my shelf for maybe a year or two, just waiting for the proper time when I felt ready to dive into a new study. So tarot and astrology is really the backbone of my study this time, because I'm approaching this the same way as I did with the I Ching. I do not want to overwhelm myself with this. There are so many resources out there, and Marlena is lovely to share many at her channel, as well as decks that you can use to support this process. But for me, if I'm going to stick with it, I got to keep it simple. And I also just know that this isn't something I'm looking to do more deeply than as a casual reader for myself, reading tarot and just wanting to pull out further layers of meaning within that. And yeah, perhaps being more mindful any given day of what energies might be at play in the cosmos that are affecting things down here. That's really fascinating. So whether considering things like that literally or even just metaphorically, I just like to learn. But I also don't want my head to explode as I do so. I want to be able to see this through over the course of the entire year. So I am not going to get into here what a Decan is. Maybe I'll generally say that the Decan Walk is basically following each Decan, which is roughly every 10 days of the year, as the sun is moving through each zodiac sign, right? Right? That's how it works. So, for example, at the moment of filming, we are in the third Decan of Aries. Every sign has 3 decans, so roughly 30 days, a month within each sign. And within each Decan, there is a different ruling planet. Anyway, this book has been great because I realized before I was about to go and purchase something else, I realized that this had a whole section in it covering the decans. So the first decan was Mars in Aries. And so you get a couple of pages like this devoted to that. And then it moves into the next decan, which in this case was the sun in Aries, so on and so forth. So that's digestible for me. And I just have to like read that every 10 days. And I'm also in the meantime reading the additional information to be offered and what follows at the end, just to further wrap my head around these concepts. But I am, of course, also using tarot in conjunction with this because Marlena, for every decan, she is creating a spread that pulls in the tarot cards that are associated with the zodiac sign, the planet that is within that sign, and then the corresponding card for that decan. So that's the bit I really love doing because, again, I love tarot. So once more, to keep this simple, this is kind of an unofficial what's in the bag. I have this little pouch that I got with an Owl Crate subscription box for a book that was star themed. And in it, I have dice. I got a while ago. I haven't really used them, but it's all just in keeping with the spirit of the thing. But they're astrology dice with like planetary and zodiac symbols, and then it comes with a numbered die. So there's like a way that you could do readings using that. And so it's just something I had gotten a while ago and tucked away for when I did feel like, if I felt like I ever had a handle on this stuff. But I've got the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck and the Living Wheel astrology cards. So, also kept in this pouch. This is my little wrap for it. I usually just keep the decks in their boxes when not being used, but in this case, this came with that same owl crate box. I can use this if I want it as like a spread. Wait, holding it wrong. I'm holding it wrong. And what does it say? The dream chooses the dreamer is what it says. But anyway, just kind of coordinates. So I keep that in there as a reading cloth. But then, yeah, so the Heavenly Bodies deck, nice and simple. Basically, there's a really cool system to this where if you're pulling two cards side by side, the guidebook explains how you can take the keywords, the phrase at the bottom, and combined between the two. So for example, let me see, I've got this Decans laid out, but let's say the sun is in Cancer. You lay out those two cards, and then for the sun itself says self-express and embody truth. This is nurture, comfort, and protection. So you turn it into a sentence like, I self-express and embody truth through nurture, comfort, and protection. So that breaks it down very simply for my pea brain to follow. So basically what I've been doing so far is going to the Living Wheel cards just to pick out the applicable heavenly body. If I were to lay out the sun in Cancer, I could just have that out on the table. And that just gives me this visual depiction of how that actually appears in the sky, and then I supplement it with these cards, which then bring in these phrases and help me construct how those two energies meet and meld together. So those have been very helpful for gelling the concepts that I will read about the Decan here. And then so far, and maybe I'll change it up as the year goes on, but in the interest of keeping things simple, I have been using just a version of the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot because I haven't studied this deck in terms of the astrological symbolism that appears in it. So I want to revisit this and be looking for it, whether a symbol is overtly appearing in there or not, or it's just the general energy. Like, for example, the first Decan was Two of Wands, and its association with the Tower and the Emperor kind of blew my mind, like had me looking at this card and its meaning in a completely new way. Like there's so much more power in this card and potential than I had ever really given it credit for. And not going to get into the details why, but it's just an example of how this study is already opening my understanding to other layers like that. And oh my God, I just started flipping the cards in my lap, like looking at it for my own reference. And I'm not even showing you, but as if you don't know what the Rider-Waite-Smith looks like. But this is the version of it that I'm currently in love with. And I forget if it's called like Pamela Coleman Smith's RWS. I forget exactly, but it has these like muted gray tones, which is going completely contrary to what my study group has been using for the fiery energy of Aries. Like everyone's pulling out all these awesome decks that really like leap off the table. And I'm just going with like this pale, kind of along the lines of this. Everything's very like gray and faded out. So maybe I'll play along more with the energies going forward. But again, I just feel like it's made for a very clean looking, clear reading, and so far so good. At the time of filming, we are, maybe I said before, in the third Decan, so might be in the next one by the time this posts, I'm not sure. But at any rate, so yeah, that's how I'm keeping my Decan Walk simple. I read the entry in this. I lay out my applicable cards with this. And I do my tarot spread with this. And if the spread that Marlena creates is open to Oracle, then I feather in whatever feels right at that time. But these are the basic decks that I have set aside. And my journal for this, because I didn't have one, and the walk was already underway by the time I acquired this, and I have to catch up in my journaling anyway, just because I just really didn't have a chance to like sit and really get my head into this while I was hosting and traveling. But I kept up with it as best as I could, and while I was out at Stonehenge with my family, I picked up this journal in the gift shop. That's fun. So yeah, I have yet to write anything in it, but it's just a basic blank pages. So I'm excited about that. So I'm accessorized for this process. I'm just not necessarily getting my head into it until right about now. Just in time to finish the first Decan, but we do what we can, and that was just everything toppling over. Other practice I have been doing my best to keep up with, although again, kind of slid until these days when I have my days back to myself to focus more properly, but Dawn Michelle's monthly medicine, which is available to her Weaver membership, and it is an absolute delight this month. Dawn Michelle is so creative. She doesn't talk about it a lot, but she's a writer, and she's a good writer, and she has crafted this whole month as a story and has turned it into like an adventure. And it's almost like a choose your own adventure, because she's got different lanes you can take that depend on how involved you want to make each reading that you do. There's like a light reading where you can just kind of do a quickie, and there's kind of like an intermediate, and then something that is more extensive and that involves like a lot more journaling and bigger spreads and so on. But don't want to get into it because it's her thing. But anyways, it has been very enchanting and fanciful. And so for that, I have been using the Victorian Fairy Tarot, because it all started out with an encounter with fairies in the woods. And this is a deck that I don't use very often, but I love to pull it out in the spring and sometimes summer, and actually autumn. I mean, all the seasons are represented in it, so it's actually fine for any time of year. But for whatever reason, springtime is when I'm really feeling it, and I wasn't planning on keeping this out on my tarot table this month as one of my main decks. So I love this opportunity to still be working with it on the side. Full disclosure though, I need to play a little catch up with the monthly medicine. It's just, that's what this week is all about. Just kind of like getting myself ramped back up. So speaking of my April tarot table, I'm actually going to finally be getting it set up properly today, because so far I have just had the Decan spreads taking over on there, but I'll probably decentralize that to another reading space. But while I went out of town for Easter, 2 decks that I grabbed to do an Easter reading with: the Forager's Daughter and the Primrose and Prose Oracle. Oh my gosh. Speaking of decks that are nice for springtime, oh my gosh, these just were exactly the feel I was looking for. And because we were more out in nature and everything, I wanted a deck. I was thinking through my animal decks. Something that could bring in some animal and plant energy, and just with its more pastel color palette, the Forager's Daughter just seemed like such a great candidate for that. So, so far then, I have been reading with this beautiful Art Nouveau style. I do also have this guidebook to go along with it, since I do pretend to be well versed on the animals and the plants. You get a nice thorough entry on each one, different aspects of what's appearing. I really love that. But I got this last year, and I feel like even though I brought it out a few times, it's kind of miscellaneous times when I was feeling it, I have been waiting for this month to actually bring it out to the table. And then with this Oracle deck, this Primrose and Prose, I first saw this when Candy of Candy Soul and Soil appeared on Lisa Pepez's channel for Say Yes to the Deck. And this was the deck she said yes to. And I didn't get it right at that time. I talked myself out of it several times, but I did ultimately give in and get it. And I don't know how well it's showing up here, but there's kind of like a holographic shine to it. Feel a little bit better there. AC also have like signs of the zodiac that are in here, but also just more general keywords. And again, more plants and animals. So I thought this might be a nice companion to the Forager's Daughter. And it turns out I was right. Before I show them side by side, the guidebook, it's little, but it's got description for each one. There's also a little poem that coincides, so it's delightful. But yeah, just to show then, there's a look at them side by side. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing this top down at the table. Probably would do these cards more justice. But look at that. I mean, hopefully you can get the idea here. How pretty. And there's a lot going on with both of these, and sometimes my eyes don't always want to see all that, and then when you've got the holographic going on here, so that's where I talked myself out of this many times, but then I ultimately got it because as I've mentioned before, like these last several months, I've really been feeling connected with my inner child and just trying to like nurture her and cheer her up sometimes. And like this, I would have freaked for something like this as a kid. I mean, like shiny, rainbowy, and cute animals on it. Like, oh my God. It's just like, it just really appeals to that side of me. It really screams to my inner child. And basically these days, what baby wants, baby gets. So I don't have children, so I've just been spoiling my own inner self. Not always. I don't give her everything that she wants. I mean, is there a She-Ra action figure currently sitting in my Amazon cart? Yeah, but I haven't bought it. That's why it's still in the basket. Saved for later even. I might never even get it. I probably will. Okay. I'm being silly. So I'll wrap that up for these. They are going to go at the tarot table. Also accompanying them, the Ethereal Visions. This is the original that I got years ago. And I didn't grab the box for the artist's Oracle deck. And I can't think of what the name of it is. Oh gosh. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh. Oh, here. I've got a guidebook. Dreamscape. Saved by the guidebook. Okay. So, these live together. Pouch pals in this deck bag. Pretty, very much in keeping that color palette of Forager's Daughter, which is why I also like to pair this deck with these. So I'm going to have some pretty fun out on that table once I have all these out there. But okay, so this is the original Ethereal Visions. I have seen the newer version of it, which is great. It's got more diversity in it. It has more of a rainbow holographic effect versus the gold that's in this original. Actually, it's the same, I believe, as appears in this Dreamscape Oracle, where I don't know, it's just a bit more rainbowy, I guess. But this is not a deck that I use often, so I just have been sticking with my original. But anyways, it's kind of getting washed out. Oh my gosh, sorry. Here we go. I mean, it's not often that I'm looking for bling on my cards, but like, this is really pretty. Sorry, I have to hold it so close, I think, in order to avoid that glare. Okay, there's the sweet spot. Hanged Man, okay. This is probably like becoming intolerable for your eyes. But then just show the Dreamscape quickly. Am I going to have better luck here? Yeah. Some cool keywords here, figures represented. It is, I mean, I say keywords. You don't really get it in the way of, well, okay, it's making a liar of me. You do get like balance, memory, but then you also get Sun Bear, where you might want to consult the guidebook and see what Sun Bear is all about. The spring, elephant, fawn, the selkie, the gift, So sometimes it's the person or creature that's depicted in the card is the keyword, which might not readily have meaning for you unless you have certain associations with those things. So there could be something that you intuitively take away. But I do find that this is one I like to go to the guidebook for, because Palomino, I'm dropping things again. The crone, I mean, like that's something you could intuit. The seer, the fish. So I guess you could make your own meaning there, but if you wanted, you can also just go, it is just a little guidebook. Then obviously, being the same artist, these look beautiful together. And as mentioned before, I think it's pretty paired with the Forager's Daughter as well. And then accordingly, Forager's Daughter will also look nice with the Dreamscape Oracle. So yeah, now that I'm showing all of these, I am frustrated with myself that I have not decided to do this top down at the table, or I could actually show all four together. So maybe at some point I'll jump in with a shot of that. But for now, look at how pretty these are going to look setting out on the table together. And I know it's not all about that for a meaningful tarot practice, but I mean, ooh, that's what I want to see right now as spring is springing and the flowers are starting to bloom. Yeah, that's gonna look nice, I think. A little busy, but nice.